Een betere wereld begint met het besef dat er nog een wereld te winnen is. Een wereld waarin gelijke kansen de normaalste zaak van de wereld zijn. Zonder voorsprong. Maar wie zijn wij om iets te zeggen als nog geen 30% van onze top vrouw is? Goed bezig zijn is niet goed genoeg. Ja, er is een hele wereld te winnen. En dat begint bij onszelf. Maar daarvoor hebben we mensen nodig die een verschil kunnen maken. Zoals jij. Begin bij ons.
My name is Sohan Maheshwar. I'm a dev advocate with AWS. I've essentially worked with a lot with emerging tech. So today I thought it would be useful for me to share my 6 technology predictions for the future. I'm based in Amsterdam, and I'm guessing most of you all are based in the Benelux. So I'll also try and give you examples of some of these technologies and companies that are doing so that are close to this region, or at least in Europe. Well, let's get started. And I'm not doing slides for today because I think slides are not a very future-proof thing. So I'm just trying something new. I was actually visiting India a few months ago, and that's where I'm originally from. I was visiting family there, and I love Indian street food. And essentially, when I'd go out to a vendor to buy some street food, I'd actually see tiny QR codes on these vendor carts. Now, these are not fancy hipster food trucks, but actually people just about eking out a minimum wage, selling fruits or snacks on the street. And each of them actually had digital payments, and they had a QR code, thanks to the advent of cheap mobile data and internet. And I really think 2020 has pushed this and has fast-forwarded this digital transformation worldwide. And I really saw the change when I visited India recently. So going on to the predictions, my first prediction really is that cloud will be everywhere. Of course, I work in AWS and I see this change firsthand, but I'm sure all of you all are familiar that 2020 changed everything. It really fast-forwarded this digital transformation worldwide. The interesting thing is, as of the start of this year, only 4 to 6% of IT spend is on the cloud, which means that organizations and enterprises are still moving to the cloud or are finding new ways to be closer to the cloud. Now, what does this really mean? This means that more regions, more availability zones, more adoption, and essentially companies working at a faster, more agile pace and saving lesser costs because of using the cloud. Now, you might think when I say for my prediction that when I say cloud will be everywhere, I mean enterprises and banks and pharmaceutical companies really move to the cloud, but it's just not that. Right now, there's so much data being generated, and essentially you have devices to gather data from the slopes of volcanoes in Hawaii to, say, the research centers in Antarctica. And all of this is edge computing, essentially, where you're getting the cloud closer to the edge. And each of these edge devices are generating data and are transforming it and are sending it to the cloud. So really, cloud is going to be everywhere, not just, say, in your typical enterprise, but also in rugged locations. You also have Internet of Things, or IoT devices, in manufacturing, in agriculture, and all of these IoT devices are connected to the cloud. So really, cloud will be everywhere. I'm sure you've also heard a lot about the 5G rollout in Europe. And in 2021, Europe is actually poised to actually roll out 5G, even in the Netherlands. As of end of 2020, there were only 24 countries in the EU that said that they would roll out 5G, but that number is bound to increase very soon. And 5G, of course, means faster speeds and much less latency for all of us as users, but this will be possible only if, again, we move that computing closer to the edge or closer to your cellular network. So really, it is this idea of cloud being everywhere. If you work in a cloud company, or if you're working in an organization that's not yet on the cloud, well, this is your best time to really start thinking of that migration plan, start thinking of maybe a hybrid way of migration or trying to get closer to the cloud, because let's face it, this year is the year that companies really move to the cloud. Okay, so for my second prediction, I actually predict, and this one's easy, but that this decade will be the decade of artificial intelligence and machine learning. let's call it AI ML for now. And I've actually worked in this space for a while. I used to work in the Alexa team before, and I worked in a chatbot startup before that. One thing I want to make very clear is that AI ML is not just talking robots and flying cars. There is a tendency of the media to portray it as, hey, AI is here to take your jobs away, and it'll take over humanity. But that's not artificial intelligence. AI is anything that sort of mimics how humans operate or behave, even when it comes to processing data. So AI and ML algorithms are not just going to be, again, like a talking robot, but you will see artificial intelligence and machine learning embedded in things like manufacturing, where it's able to spot production anomalies in real time. You will see ML algorithms in agriculture, where you're helping farmers effectively manage their resources such as soil and water more intelligently. Honestly, the way I see it and the way we see it at Amazon is that in the fullness of time, every app and organization and business out there will use artificial intelligence and machine learning very soon. I love to take analogies from the past, and I don't know if you all remember, but maybe 30, 40 years ago, many companies, they'd actually advertise that, hey, we're database first. 10, 15 years ago, companies would say, hey, we're cloud first. And a few years ago, companies would say, we're mobile first. Any organization now will start with, we're AI first, but we assume that they have a database, a cloud, and a mobile app. I think that it will be like that with artificial intelligence in a few years' time, where all companies will have some levels of machine learning embedded to make their product better. Let's take the example of even the wildfires that consumed the Australian bush and the American West Coast in 2020. Soon there will be machine learning models that will predict the dangers of these wildfires by using edge devices that we just spoke about. So that was my second prediction for today. And just to add to that, it's not just going to be machine to human interactions, but there will be a lot more machine to machine interactions in 2021. To give you a statistic, in 2018, only 33% of the connections on the internet were machine to machine, but in 2021, that number is expected to rise closer to 50%. As an example, if you speak to an Alexa device that turns on a smart light, that is a machine to machine connection. So really 2020 was the year machine learning went mainstream, and this decade is going to be the decade of AI and ML. Time for my third prediction right now. And my third prediction is that data and analytics will transform not just our digital, but also our physical spaces. I think everyone talks about how data is the new oil and data is the new soil. And a lot of companies have tremendous amounts of data coming in, but they're not really sure what to do with it. Today, we actually generate more data in an hour than that was created in all of 2000. And that's a true fact. So what do we really do with this data? To give you a great use case, and this is the talk of town right now, but let's talk about the vaccines. If you're vaccinated, congratulations, but a company that's actually rolled out one of the vaccines, Moderna, is a company that was founded about 10 or 11 years ago. So they're a very modern, tech-focused pharmaceutical company. And they actually run their drug design studio on AWS, using AWS's infrastructure to design these mRNA sequences for protein targets. So they actually collate all of their data in data warehouses and data lakes using AWS so that they have a single source of truth for all of their company data. And like I said, it's not just about transforming our digital spaces, but also about transforming our physical spaces. So of course, it's changed how we digitally interact, but many of the places that we live in or that we work in have sort of run under assumptions that are more than decades old. And things have really changed in the last few years thanks to tech. So this is an opportunity for a lot of companies, for a lot of cities also, to look at how communities can live healthier, they can live safer, and make them way more efficient. For instance, you can actually look at how pedestrians are using a subway. You can actually analyze foot traffic, how people are entering a museum or a stadium. All of these are great examples of how this data will really transform our physical lives as well. Here in Europe, two cities are doing a great job with this. One of them is Grenoble in France, and of course, Amsterdam, where I'm based out of. They're really looking at a lot of these data points to make communities and make cities far more livable. Also, on the other hand, right now, our payments in cities, in physical spaces, are a mixture of both digital and physical, but that is going to change a lot more, where it will move towards a lot more digital payments. And especially with things like blockchain payments coming soon and getting more and more mainstream, that is also going to really change how people interact in physical spaces, thanks to the data that's coming in. So that was my third prediction for the day. My fourth prediction is how voice and video will really transform and will play a big role in how we communicate. Again, going back to 2020, we all used audio video to communicate with each other, to work with each other, play board games, celebrate parties. We use things like Clubhouse, Twitch, Zoom. And we also saw businesses adapt to this. In 2021 and in the future, I really see voice and video play a big role in how we communicate. If you have seen the news, augmented reality and virtual reality are slowly gaining steam. And with the advent of something like 5G, which will really enable high speeds and low latencies, that unlocks experiences like augmented reality or like virtual reality. And in these experiences, you want to be able to communicate via voice and video. You're not going to have clunky touchscreens or keyboards and mouse to operate a virtual reality environment. It's going to be via voice. I used to work in the Alexa team before, so I really saw how voice interfaces could transform a user interface. My parents are fairly good with tech, but every time I teach them a new app, it's invariably click this, do this, swipe here, and this happens. Like, it's a series of steps that they learn. But imagine if they could talk to the interface to make something happen. Talking comes naturally to all of us, so it's a way more natural user interface. In fact, a great example is from Ghana. A company called Cow Tribe is actually dispatching things like vaccines, feeds, and doctors to cow herders in the villages in Ghana. And these villagers are able to do so via just simple voice commands. Another example closer home is this company called Yubo, which is a French social media company, which is like a live social video type company aimed at teenagers roughly, and they already have 40 million users worldwide. It's just stunning that how people are communicating using voice and video. All right, so for my fifth prediction, it's going to be about sustainability in tech. First off, I'm so glad that people are now talking about sustainability in tech. Just to give you another statistic, AWS's infrastructure is 3.6 times more energy efficient than a typical data center that's on-premise. So just by virtue of using the cloud, your organization is a little more sustainable compared to using your own data center. And why that is because of how cloud business model works. You're using shared infrastructure that's optimized and that really drives server utilization well above what is possible in a data center for one enterprise. And I'm glad that this conversation has started when it comes to sustainability in technology. AWS at least is committed to using only renewable energy sources by 2025. In fact, both AWS and Azure have said that by 2025, they will be running all their regions and data centers on complete 100% renewable energy sources. In fact, AWS also is really looking at reducing water usage in data centers. We work with climate patterns for each region that we set up in. We work with local water management experts to make sure that there's as less wastage of water as possible. For me, the exciting thing about sustainability and tech is that the Benelux region comes from a culture of sustainability. The Netherlands and even parts of Belgium have used windmills and the power of wind turbines to harness energy for centuries now. And most of us ride bikes, and there is this real culture of being sustainable when it comes to farming and transport and so on. So really, I see a lot of movement here and a lot of scope for startups and enterprises to do something in the space of sustainability in technology. All right, so last prediction from me, and I'm going to cheat a little bit now and sort of add two predictions, but this is something that's looking very future first. So my final prediction is about quantum computing and outer space. So let's talk about quantum computing first. How computers work right now is very simple. Everything is made up of a bit. A bit can be either 0 or 1. So whatever you're seeing on screen is some crazy combination of zeros and ones. In quantum computing, there is something called a qubit, where it is possible to exist in a state of both 0 and 1. How that happens, I have no idea. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But qubits basically can hold both these states. Now, what this means is, in computing, when you have some memory, you can run a finite set of calculations. But with qubits, that number is exponentially increased. So you can run an insane number of calculations at one given time. Now, this has a lot of implications for tech in general. For instance, almost all of the encryption that we have on the web as we use it is based on the fact that computers can't crack a certain number of permutations that the encryption uses. This will change with quantum computing. So we'll have to rethink how we do things like encryption online, but also it will lead to better algorithms when it comes to drug discovery, financial portfolio optimization, material science, machine learning, and so on. From an AWS point of view, we're really looking at democratizing this advanced technology and giving it to you as a developer to build something and really break the boundary or push the boundary with quantum computing. So we have a service called Bracket, where you can actually use quantum computing technology to do your computational storage. Honestly, I'd love to see what you guys are building. In fact, just today, this Dutch startup called QFox, it's spelled QFox, got a huge investment, and they are doing something with quantum computing and quantum modems. So again, in the Benelux, a lot of movement in this scene. And finally, space, the final frontier. How many of you all are fans of like science fiction, Star Trek and things like that? Well, I'm sure you follow the news about Blue Origin's first tourist rocket trip, about the Mars rover and controlling a helicopter in the air. It just fascinates me and blows my mind. What I'm here to talk about is the fact that 990 satellites will be launched yearly by the year 2028. Each of these satellites are sending back data, which is helping researchers track things like glacial recession, maritime agencies, marine reserves, and so on. And all of this data will soon be available to us to actually really build. People are also using space as a new means of setting up networks. So this is going to transform a lot of things in the near to distant future. And honestly, all of this data coming through can really change how we look at the world in general and how we look at making decisions related to getting data in the world. So yeah, my final prediction is in the near future, you will see a lot more quantum computing, which will change things, as well as outer space tech. Well, the final word, let me just maybe quickly summarize what I spoke about since we are almost out of time. 1, the cloud will be everywhere. 2, this is going to be the decade of AI ML, or artificial intelligence and machine learning. 3, a lot of AI ML is powered by all of this data that's coming through. And this data will transform not just our digital spaces, but also our physical spaces. 4, voice and video will transform and will play a big role in how we communicate in this decade. 5, I spoke about sustainability in tech and why it's important to have that conversation right now. And finally, I looked at quantum computing and how outer space tech will be available to all of us very soon. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you so much for this talk. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something new and it inspired you to think about tech. I do a lot of talks and things about emerging tech. I have a new show on YouTube called the Emerging Tech Show. I've recorded a season, so I'd love for you to check it out as well. You can also find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and all of that. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I have time for maybe a couple of questions here, so yeah, feel free to shoot. Okay, so I see a few comments here, which are pretty cool. Thomas asks, isn't the scope for applications of quantum computing quite limited? Thomas, good question. And as of now, I don't think anyone sort of figured out what the boundaries or what the limitations are. I think right now there are very few applications, as you said, but I think when that tech evolves and as the tech progresses, you will see a lot more implications and a lot more applications of quantum computing. I think we're just scratching the surface of what really is possible with quantum computing. As Martin says, Bitcoin mining using quantum computing en masse. Well, that's a joke, but it'll probably happen very soon, so who knows. But yeah, good comment there, Martin.
Een betere wereld begint met het besef dat er nog een wereld te winnen is. Een wereld waarin gelijke kansen de normaalste zaak van de wereld zijn. Zonder voorsprong. Waarin de innovatie van vandaag niet de zorg van morgen is. Een wereld die geen filter nodig heeft om schoon te zijn. En waarin geld schoon is zonder het wit te wassen. Maar wie zijn wij om iets te zeggen? Nog geen 30% van onze top is vrouw. Slechts 15% van onze hypotheken is duurzaam. Tikkie blijft niet eeuwig nieuw. En we hebben witwassen nog steeds niet de wereld uitgeholpen. Goed bezig zijn is niet goed genoeg. Ja, er is een wereld te winnen. En dat begint bij onszelf. Maar daarvoor hebben we mensen nodig die een verschil kunnen maken. Zoals jij. Begin bij ons.